Mierle Ukeles, born in 1939 in Denver, grew up in Denver, and eventually ended up moving to New York City to go to Pratt University for art school. She made fairly traditional art for the beginning part of her artistic career, but in 1966 she married her now husband, and they had 2 kids together, and that completely changed her whole perspective on art and humanity. Mierle invented the idea of maintenance art, is what she calls it, and the essence of that is the upkeep, care, and maintenance of a space and of a piece and of people is an artistic act within itself. In 1969, she wrote her manifesto of maintenance art, laying down the ideas and the concepts behind all of her pieces. She says, quote in it, "Everything I do to keep myself alive is art. Everything I do to keep others alive is art." From that point on, that became her project. What's cool is that she doesn't make representations of maintenance, she actually does the maintenance. So instead of, for example, painting a broom, she just sweeps the gallery space for visitors and performs that. The art becomes the process, the time spent, the repetition, the caretaking, the effort. It's the cleaning that's important, not the clean floor. It's the hours that she spends doing it, not the outcome. She asks through her work, why do we worship creation but ignore maintenance, when maintenance is actually what keeps the world going? One of her early performances is called Washing Tracks Maintenance. So in 1973 and 74, she literally got on the steps of the Wadsworth Atheneum Museum and just scrubbed and cleaned windows and swept and cleaned the front whole facade of the museum. It was simple and it was radical, because she's saying, look, this is the labor that keeps this whole thing going. Why do we pretend it's invisible? Why are we not holding it to the same importance that we hold the artwork within? The act itself is the art. It's the time she spends, the way people react, the sounds of scrubbing. It is the project that is the art. It doesn't matter what the outcome is. In 1977, Mierle became the official artist resident of the New York City Department of Sanitation. She's held that position for almost 50 years. Her largest and most famous piece is Touch Sanitation, where she spent 11 months between 1979 and 1980 traveling around all of New York City and meeting as many sanitation workers as she could. Around 8,500 people she shook hands with and took a picture with.
Bernie Rocky. Hi, Haley. Hi, Haley.
8,500 people she went around, shook their hand, and said, thank you for keeping New York City alive. That was the art. It was meeting people, it was connecting with them. The repetitive handshake, the routes, the whole thing is a huge performance about recognizing invisible labor. She wasn't just making art, she was archiving the lives and stories of these workers. She documented where she went, who she met, and what they said. The process became this massive living archive of labor. Her biggest long-term work is Flow City, a project at the Fresh Kills landfill, the largest landfill at the world at the time when she was doing it, in 1983 to the mid-1990s. She created spaces where people could watch the flow of garbage being transported across the landfill and into the landfill and all the processes that happen to it there. It sounds strange, but it was powerful. She wanted people to see waste as not something that disappears, but something that exists in a cycle that is indicative of the city itself. The process here is the project. She's highlighting the cycle and the lifespan of the garbage that we produce every day and forces us to think on that, rather than it just being a menial object in our life that we toss and forget about. The entire installation is about showing systems and cycles rather than the finished object. There is no finished object in most of these. Ukeles' philosophy is very clearly laid out in her manifesto, and it's pretty straightforward. Basically what she believes is that creation is glamorous and the world loves creation, as opposed to maintenance. The upkeep of those created things is ignored. but both are really necessary to keep everything still moving, whether it's art or just humanity. She forces us to see the hidden labor in everything. She forces us to see hidden labor in everyday life, the workers who clean, repair, protect, and maintain. And the time they spend becomes visible, meaningful, and important to us. Process is the project, often, in art. As an artist, your work exists really only as a record of what you did to it, and her work is an incredibly good example of this, because all she does is project. She doesn't have any finished work other than like the clean steps of a building. Her pieces aren't objects, they're events, they're time spent, they're conversations, logbooks, handwritten maps, documentation, photos, audio recordings. She isn't just doing the work, she's archiving her whole lifestyle. She's making invisible processes public, and she's making maintenance visible as art. Ukeles reminds us that keeping the world alive takes work, constant, repetitive, unglorious work, and she turns that work into art and makes us accept that. She shows us that the process is the point, the project is the maintenance, and the artist is the one who pays attention.